Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, this is Orphanlast, aka Skylar Madison, and welcome to the OpenToonz news. As of the release of OpenToonz 1.2, I've received a number of complaints. As such, I have needed to have a rather lengthy disclaimer. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and narrate the entire disclaimer, otherwise every single OpenToonz news video will have the first 5 minutes covering a 5-minute long disclaimer, which would be boring. But I do expect people to read this, and if they wind up leaving me messages and such like that, expecting me to respond any way than the disclaimer states, then that's your fault if you didn't read it. I'm sorry. Okay, so for the first story of the day, we have the edit tool. Edit mode, bring back the manipulator widget from TOONZ Harley Quinn, basically. And I've actually mentioned this bounty before in one of my previous OpenToonz news videos, and this is going to make the animate tool far more useful. It'll make the workflow a lot faster as well, because you won't have to constantly be using this little drop-down menu. Now, currently it says that the bounty is closed. I think that means that donations are no longer being received, and someone's been developing this. In fact, I know people are developing this at this point in time, but before they closed it, I went ahead and gave an extra $50. One thing that I find curious is that there's no bounty hunter listed, no price listed at all. So I don't really understand why I don't see this. Like, bounty hunters, did you solve this issue? That's it. My opinion is that we need to know when someone's working on these bounties, otherwise you may wind up feeling as though you've wasted an extra $50, if that makes sense. So something needs to be done there, so that people actually want to continue donating to Bounty Source. It needs to be a requirement that a bounty hunter needs to be here, and we need to be able to see some sort of price tag, and the issue needs to be closed once the actual bounty has been met. It's fine that I donated this $50. It's fine. It's just something that I don't want to be a repeat incident where the bounty has been met, even though the price isn't listed. I don't mind supplying developers with some money, but if someone's already developing the project, I don't see why that extra $50 is needed, or why it would still be getting accepted. But like I said, I'm fine with it. It's fine. Now, to continue that specific story onward, it moves on to the next story, this one right here. Transition and Icon by Podzvirov's Modified. I don't know how to read that. But anyways, it's interesting because if you look at these icons, you can see that they've modified the interface for the animate tool. And this actually moves on over to the next story as well, the third story of the day. Of course, this is a work in progress, but enum, property, translation, and icon. Again, these titles on GitHub can get really weird, but it's the way it is. So if we scroll down just a little bit, we can see the animate tool is selected, and we have buttons here instead of just a drop-down menu. So that's interesting to see. Now, of course, I don't see the same sort of center that you would see in TOONZ Harley Quinn right here, but there are efforts being put into place in order to make the animate tool a much more pleasant experience to use. So I love this. This is great. Now, of course, here's a closer look at how everything is for the changes that they've made to the animate tool. So this is just to move the position, to rotate, to scale up, to skew, to move the center, and not really quite sure what this is, but that's cool. It's all looking very nice. The icons I fully approve of. The language is easy to understand. Maybe you click on this button and then you wind up with an animate tool that looks like TOONZ Harley Quinn. If that's the case, that's cool. Not only that, but Turtletooth says the following.
I'm a big fan of this. I think it can minimize clicks and bring back the combo edit tool as an option. Seems great. There are two things that I want to make sure aren't lost. The benefit of the drop-down was the word to help clarify what the user was selecting. Will there actually be a tooltip when you hover your mouse over the icon? to say what the tool does? Will the different modes still be accessible via shortcut keys? As long as those two things are there, I'm totally on board.
And that's really cool to see, because usually Turtletooth, in my opinion, is right on the money. And of course, you know, there's this really long conversation going on here. You should actually click on all of the links in the video description below relating to all three of these stories and such like that, because it is a good story, it's worth the read, and yeah, let's move on to the next story. The title of the next story is Allow for Multilingual Effects Help Tooltip. JP Turcotte states the following.
This pull request allows for showing the Effects Help tooltip in the user's preference language as indicated in Preferences. If a folder by the name of the language string exists in that specific document and programming language, the help file there will be shown first. If the folder or request file cannot be found, the file in that will be shown by default. This is my first code pull request, and I am not a programmer, so please be lenient. Thanks to Rodney for coming up with the idea, to Turtletooth and Shun Iwasawa for helping me resolve my build issues, and finally to Manonjong for providing encouragement and the logic behind these challenges.
So after having read that, I was kind of confused as to what that meant, so I stated the following. So you'll get mouse over tooltips on effects to help you understand what the effects node will do. And then JP Turcotte responds as follows.
Sadly, no. But if you open the properties by double-clicking on an effects node and click on Effects Help in the pop-up's top right corner, the help file that opens will now be language dependent. They are currently only in Japanese.
So yeah, this is definitely something that I think would help getting some tool tips, basically, especially with anything that has to do with the effects schematic and everything like that. Getting some instructions on how to use effects is essential, especially if you want to start combining the effects with each little node in a unique way to come up with something that's completely new. That right there, I think, would be excellent to have, because since it's all already just in Japanese, we might as well get other translations as well. For the next story, it's given the title Crash with Zoom, and Behemoth actually demonstrates just how odd this is, where basically you're able to zoom in on an image, especially if it's a vector graphic, just so much to the point to where you're able to crash OpenToonz. See that pop up? That showed that the program had just crashed. Specifically, the thing that I found was pretty humorous here was this. He says,
Is such a zoom required for viewing? Here, I wanted to see if the Higgs boson were correctly rendered on my drawing. So for some reason, OpenToonz crashed.
So, if you want to know what the Higgs boson is, I went ahead and went to Google for you, and then went into Wikipedia. The Higgs boson is an elementary particle in the standard model of particle physics, first suspected to exist in the 1960s. It is a quantum excitation of the Higgs field, a fundamental field of crucial importance to particle physics theory. Anyways, the article continues on and on, but the thing that I liked the most about this comment was that it's just very intelligent and humorous. And I would also tend to agree with Behemoth in that there's really no reason why we would need to zoom in that much. It's not like we can draw anything, well, that close. For the next story, it's titled, Hint NVIDIA and AMD GPU Usage. Manonjong states the following.
This pull request adds logic to hint to NVIDIA and AMD cards that it should use the card's GPU. OpenToonz currently does not automatically trigger the GPU usage on NVIDIA and AMD graphics cards. This causes OpenToonz to perform poorly on lower-end machines because it uses CPU, even though it may have a graphics card with a more powerful GPU. Typically, NVIDIA and AMD cards have to be told that certain applications are to use its GPU. OpenToonz is not one that is typically detected by default, since it doesn't have a manufacturer's predefined profile in the card's settings. Users need to go into the card's properties and set up a profile for it in order to be used. This change exports a setting that the cards scan for when OpenToonz starts up. Once detected, it will force the use of the GPU unless an existing profile already exists. Note, this may solve some performance problems with OpenToonz, but it does not resolve all issues due to lack of GPU usage. Case in point, currently, without either an NVIDIA profile or this hint, when I run version 1.2, the viewers are blank. Explicitly creating a NVIDIA profile fixes my problems. However, if I just run version 1.2 with this hint enabled, I can verify it is using GPU, but I still have a blank viewer.
So this is really cool. For those of you that don't understand what that means, every computer has a processor. About 10-15 years ago, all computers operated off of the processor and the processor alone. But within more recent history, hardware has been able to upgrade the graphics card, which is basically the chip in your computer that processes anything that looks like a picture on your computer. Every computer has a graphics card. And so they added a processor onto that, and it's called the GPU. Modern software utilize both the processor and the GPU, whereas OpenToonz oftentimes, more often than not, only uses the processor and the processor alone. So this specific pull request is discussing how they're trying to resolve this issue so that OpenToonz will be able to operate more like modern software, where it's able to use the resources from the GPU and the processor. But as is visible in the last paragraph of what I just read, they are experiencing some problems, but there have been some indications that progress has been made. So this is good news. I'm looking forward to hearing more about this. For the next story, it's titled, New Option for TOONZ Raster Brush Tool. Draw Order Pellet Order. This is really cool because if you use Adobe Flash or Adobe Animate, what it's called now, you're able to select whether or not you want to be drawing in front of strokes or drawing on top of other strokes and such like that. Now, of course, this isn't dealing with any type of vector artwork or anything. This is just specifically the TOONZ raster brush. And I could go ahead and read all this, but really you guys should click on the link in the video description below in order to get an idea as to what's being discussed here. So here, let me go ahead and show you this GIF, and you're going to be able to see exactly what's going on here. You can see he draws a line, and it's a line that's by default always on top of everything that's been drawn. He selects always from a drop-down list, and that gets it so that all the lines are below all these other lines. Then he goes to style order on the drop-down list, and it's drawing on top of everything. For the next story, it's titled So Slow, and it's a post made by Adam Earl, a professional animator, and he states the following.
OpenToonz slows right down in vector and raster after less than 10 minutes. It's so slow, in fact, I am thinking about switching back to paper because I can draw and animate way faster.
Now, he did say after 10 minutes. Now, I'm not quite sure if that means 10 minutes of use or 10 minutes worth of animation footage. I think that means 10 minutes of animation footage, personally, because I don't experience that problem to that degree.
How can we bring this viewer into the future? How can we make it ready by the middle of the year? What is it going to take? How much is it going to cost? Can we have a very real conversation about this instead of it's a lot of work and dismissing it? Perhaps we can make this a GitHub Kanban so we can really start to nut this out and make it happen. Thanks, guys.
And, you know, there's a good conversation going here. It's worth clicking on the link in the video description below and seeing what's going on. But, you know, this actually leads me into the next story, which is improve brush response. And Shun Irasawa states the following.
This is the first fix for
the post that Adam Earl posted, the last story, which is so slow.
For enhancing TOONZ raster and raster brushes. This pull request enables a partial update to the viewer. When using raster or TOONZ raster brushes, the viewer will update only a small region around the brush tip. It will therefore reduce the computation time to redraw the scene. Note, this will not take effect with the TOONZ vector brush, since the vector strokes are rendered in a different way.
Now, let me pause right there. Now, the reason why nobody wants to work on how the brush tool works with the vector levels in OpenToonz, it's because of this. Programming is hard. It takes a lot of math. And then, when you compare programming, updates, and fixing things with raster artwork, it's a lot easier to fix a problem because all the brush is doing is placing different colors on a series of pixels. Whereas with vector work, you're dealing with creating geometric shapes. So while it's normally extremely mathematical in order to program anything inside of a computer, once you go into fixing things with vector graphics and stuff, the amount of math and the complexity of that math gets multiplied exponentially. It gets extremely difficult, and that's why people aren't really wanting to jump on board with the vector problems that exist inside of OpenToonz. Now, it does need to be fixed. Now, in my opinion, if the vector work is ever going to be fixed, it's going to need some sort of crowdsourcing. It doesn't matter if it's Bounty Source or Kickstarter or anything, it just needs money. The only way that we're ever going to get a developer to improve upon the brush engine for vectors and such like that is if they receive money. No one wants to work on something that difficult for free. Pure and simple. Now, don't get me wrong. I love this. This is excellent. We're getting improvements to the TOONZ raster brush engine and the raster brush engine so that you're able to get your animation to be 10 minutes plus and you're going to be able to see a marked improvement. I'm really excited about this, really jazzed about it. But it's just a simple fact. I'm not upset that the vector brushes aren't being worked on. The only thing that I get upset about with the vector brush and how poor it performs is whenever a new person starts using OpenToonz, the program is designed by default to draw with vectors. The first thing people do whenever they open up a graphics program is they select the brush and they start trying to draw. And once you do that, once you click your stylus to the viewer, it immediately creates a vector level. And the experience sucks, and then they uninstall the program and they move on. That needs to change. The immediate default, when they first open up the program, select the brush, and click their stylus to the viewer, they should immediately be drawing on a raster level. Because the drawing experience is just a magnitude better. And if people's immediate first interaction with OpenToonz is that the drawing experience is good, even if it's just a raster level, then great, they're going to probably stick around, especially long enough to learn the program. And at some point in time, someone, it's probably going to be me, is going to start a Kickstarter or some sort of crowdsourcing campaign to improve the brush work with vector levels, and to get it so that your video can be 10 minutes plus with vector drawings and such like that without any lag. The only reason why the vector level is set to being the default when you first open up the program, select the brush, and start drawing is because in OpenToonz versions prior to 1.1.3, in those versions prior, the vector level was the only type of level that you could draw on without OpenToonz crashing immediately. Well, at this point, we've kind of progressed past that. We now have raster levels and TOONZ raster levels that are able to be worked on without the program crashing. And by having the vector level front and center right now in OpenToonz as the first impression of OpenToonz, we're shooting the software in the foot. That's what's happening. Because I gotta tell you, every single day I run into somebody online that says, oh yeah, you know, I tried out OpenToonz, but you know, I tried drawing kind of fast, and for some reason it didn't seem to keep up very well. In fact, it kept up with me terribly, and it didn't really draw it very well. So I drew a little bit slower, then a lot slower, and then really slow, and it just was a horrible experience, so I uninstalled the program. I get that every time, and then I ask, were you drawing with a vector level or a raster level? And they have no idea what I'm talking about, but they say, well, probably a vector level. Okay, well, that seems to be the thing, the first question everybody has when they first use this software. How can I fix the smoothness of my brush? I can't seem to draw a very good line in OpenToonz. I hear that and read that every day, and it's because the vector levels are front and center. That needs to change until we can finally fix the vectors. That's my opinion. But let's move on. Again, I'm very happy about this story. They're actually improving the raster levels and the TOONZ raster levels. Awesome. And we'll be able to make scenes that last a very long time. That's great. That's excellent. Now, in making this video, it's been extremely difficult. Actually, more so than most OpenToonz news videos, because ultimately, GitHub is designed for developers by developers. So when you go on to a issue or a pull request or something like that, most of the time it seems like it's a developer talking to developers. And the best sorts of issues and pull requests that I can report on are the ones that actually have a layman's term explanation of what it's about, and then a developer's explanation of what it's about. And so, when the layman's term explanation is missing, I have to go into the thread and say, hey, can someone explain this in layman's terms? And most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, no one answers that question. No one tries to explain it in some simplified sort of way. And that's extremely frustrating. And it should be frustrating to the developers as well, because my OpenToonz news videos are extremely popular. They bring in more people that use OpenToonz. It educates the already established and new people to OpenToonz as to what needs to be fixed in OpenToonz, what you guys are working on, what you guys might want to get paid for, and since it's bringing in more people using OpenToonz, that's a ever-growing audience that might be willing to actually help you out financially to do it, giving you a job. So, if you don't answer my questions inside of a story, you can guarantee that story's not going to be reported on. There was one story about OpenGL. Now, there's been a lot of people that have been talking about OpenGL. I know that it's very good for the software. I know that it has something to do with the CPU and the GPU communicating with one another, but that particular article made no sense to me. What aspect of OpenGL is it talking about? I can tell that it's talking about something specific about it, but I have no idea. I have no idea. How am I supposed to report on that? So after a week of having the comment, hey, can someone explain this in layman's terms, no one answers. I'm thinking, okay, maybe next week. Okay, no answer. Okay, third week, no one answers. Okay, well, this is when I normally release an OpenToonz news video. Another week goes by, no one answers the question, I delete the link, and then I report the news without it. If you want people to be excited for OpenToonz, if you want people to be willing to donate to things that need to be fixed, you need to answer my questions. Now, I know I'm just another guy, but seriously, I do contribute in my own way, so help me out a little bit. Anyways, guys, that pretty much concludes it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe, and if you didn't like it, please like, share, and subscribe anyways. Like I said, there's a lot of work that goes into this. And if you guys would like to take a look at any of my other videos, feel free to click on any of them that are appearing on the screen right now. Thank you for your time.